it's my great pleasure to be hosting today. I'm Emma Jones. I'm an innovation consultant with GHD Digital's D-Lab, and I'm also the global lead for Smartseed. So hence why I'm hosting today, and I'm so excited. So we're going to kick off first with an acknowledgement of country by Leon Farwood, who's one of our senior Indigenous community engagement consultants with GHD. Leon.
Thank you, Emma. So my name is Leon Farwood. My traditional heritage is Ugaramle from Stephen Island in the east, Mual Gali Talgal from Moore Island in the west of Torres Strait, and my Aboriginal ancestry is Kukuyalanji and Girame. I acknowledge, it's my privilege to acknowledge country. I acknowledge that country is alive and it breathes. I acknowledge that traditional custodians are part of country. They're not separate to it. I acknowledge traditional custodians get their dreaming stories, language, songs, dances, law from their country. I acknowledge those elders, past, present, and emerging, and I acknowledge their inherent duty to care for country, as I acknowledge ours to care for country. And I'd like to thank you. Cheers.
Thank you, Leon. That's wonderful and sets the scene for today. And building on that, I would like to now set the vision for this Smartseeds program, very special Smartseeds program in our 10th year with a focus on future communities. And to do that, we've prepared a short video for you all. So I share that with you now. And now it's my great pleasure to welcome Michelle Kramer, the Australian Leader for Future Communities, to say a few words. Michelle.
Hi everyone, and thank you to Emma and Leon for getting us started. I'm Michelle Kramer, GHD's Future Communities Leader in Australia. And I always think I should add, and what's the opportunity for Gadigal country when I see that video, which is the land where I'm currently located. We showed this video at the start of the Future Communities Smartseeds Challenge workshop held in February. And for those who are there, you will know that I said it never ceases to give me goosebumps. And today's no different. What better way to come together as an industry of professionals that can improve communities and the lives of people across Australia. I'd like to thank everyone for being here today, our participating organisations, emerging professional participants, program challenge champions, mentors and judges. Together, I believe we can tackle these big challenges facing Australia today and find genuine, innovative, creative ideas to take us forward. At GHD, we believe that successful communities are resilient, productive, connected, and inspired, regardless of their scale, geography, purpose, cultural identity, or any other contextual feature. We also believe that by putting people first, we can create human-centered communities that are the very best version of themselves, balancing their unique needs with the hopes and aspirations for the future. We think of it as the necessary emphasis of the S in ESG and its relationship to infrastructure provision. How will people use it rather than what it is? GHD plays an important role across transport, water, energy, environment, and public places and spaces. And that responsibility to Australians is not lost on us. So what is top of mind for Australians right now? We scanned Australia's media, and what we found will be very familiar to everyone here. Australians are dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic, not just as a health crisis, but also as a disruptor of understood working patterns, workforce, and industry. It's turned education on its head and given us a reawakening of the importance of nature and open space for our well-being. Climate change, witnessed through unprecedented bushfires, floods, and storms that have not just impacted physical environments and caused temporary or permanent migration, but has also impacted our community's mental health, with a rising fear of the future in young people identified by UNICEF Australia. And growing inequity showcasing itself in the form of a lack of affordable housing, reduced appropriate employment opportunities, and highlighted gender, race, and cultural inequities. People are marching in protest now more than ever before. So these challenges are complicated and reach into the hearts, minds, and desires of our communities. When we put this same framework to the February Smart Seeds Challenge workshop, the Australia-wide virtual room identified 5 priority challenges. These priorities form the basis of the challenge statements you, our Smart Seed teams, will explore over the next 12 weeks. Each of our challenge champions will describe these in more detail in a moment, but as an overview, the key challenges are: how can we ensure housing is affordable in Australia? How can we achieve place attraction and vitality where all people feel welcome? How can we make sure the voices of community participate in community shaping? How can we better be prepared for and best respond to climate shocks like the recent flooding that has devastated northern New South Wales and Queensland and the fires in WA? And what positive learnings can we take from the pandemic in terms of celebrating local neighbourhoods, hybrid working, and the use of technology as an enabler? I'd like to challenge all teams to think about how new policies, tools, inventions, and creative thinking can give us a positive pathway forward. Perhaps think about ESG targets and the common ground they give us, innovative financing, artificial intelligence, the rise of green energy, and new technologies that are helping people get back to life in a pandemic world, which we think are inspired. So with that, I'll hand back over to Emma, our facilitator, and the many great minds across this virtual room to kick off this industry program to create positive, thriving future communities in Australia. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Michelle. And we will get into a bit more depth on those challenges in just a moment. But first, I want to share with you about Smart Seeds and the program ahead. So Smart Seeds is GHD Digital's very own design-led innovation program, and it focuses on 3 things. So if you think about what Michelle has just shared, and the multiplier effect of Smart Seeds is about growing leaders who can innovate, advocate, and influence change. It's about fostering interdisciplinary and intergenerational collaboration, and it is about generating fresh thinking to tackle some of these most complex challenges, as you've just heard. Smart Seeds is also coming up to celebrating 10 years. And in this time, we have delivered more than 40 programs across Australia, New Zealand, the UK, and soon to be North America and the Middle East as well. And what this means for all of you here in the launch today is that you're joining a global network of more than 1,800 change makers from 250 organisations who are just as passionate about creating community benefit or lasting community benefit. And can I say, we are absolutely thrilled to have you. Joining us today are leaders from McConnell Dowell, Bridge Housing, Sydney Water, Transport for New South Wales, Stockland, Renew South Australia, Orange City Council, Dexus, John Holland, the Hunter and Central Coast Development Corporation, Greater Sydney Commission, and the South Australia Government Department for Infrastructure and Transport. So imagine what the participants from these organisations might achieve by working together. And it's organisations like yours that have this shared commitment to promoting innovation and developing the emerging leaders, which are an essential ingredient to Smart Seeds. Speaking with them earlier over the last few months, we've heard about the outcomes that they want to achieve from this program. They want to hear, or you want to hear new insights and ideas for solving some of the big challenges of our cities and communities, to establish stronger connections among emerging leaders across both government and private sectors, which will not only be a collaboration opportunity for this program, but future collaboration opportunities as well. To provide opportunities for these emerging leaders to explore new ways of solving complex challenges and networking beyond their normal spheres, and in doing this, building their capability in problem solving and design thinking. So that's what we've heard. And I'll now step you through the Smart Seeds program about how we're going to work to achieve these outcomes all together. So you recall that Michelle had mentioned earlier that back in February, we hosted an event called a challenge workshop where we had many of your organisations and other industry leaders come together to identify and define the challenges that Michelle described. That's over here in the dark blue bit. So they distilled from broad themes and trends down into these refined 5 challenges that we'll present today. And participants, you'll soon be assigned your challenges at the end of this launch. And in the coming weeks, you will come together as a team to do that research piece, to get out there and talk to stakeholders, develop these insights around your challenge. Your task is not to solve the whole thing. It's rather to then refine your challenge into a user-centered problem in the middle there. And once you have a view on that real nub of the problem, you'll be probably 3 to 5 weeks in by this stage, and you'll begin to ideate. You'll generate lots of solutions and apply some tools that we'll share with you to test these solutions against the problem that you're trying to solve. And there's lots of ways to do this. But once you feel like you've arrived at something that's going to work, you'll be about 7 weeks in, and you'll start to shape your solution and think about how you could actually get this off the ground and working. Along the way, I have to say, through this double diamond, you will be supported and guided through 7 learning labs by our facilitators. And the emphasis on these, from these 7 learning labs, is on learning by design, which is the curriculum we've prepared, learning by doing, which is getting out there and actually practicing the skills, and finally learning from others, which is probably the most important. And it's, when I say learning from others, I mean learning from your team, also learning from the vast Smart Seeds network we're wrapping around you, and plus your individual networks within your organisation or your professional networks. Finally, you're going to pitch your team's best idea for a solution at the virtual showcase event in July. And the aim here is to really inspire and compel others to support you and to take action. And with industry support, I have to say, ideas from Smart Seeds really can be delivered, because following the showcase event, we will create opportunities for the teams to continue discussions with organisations involved who might be interested in developing the ideas further. So how does this sound? How are you feeling, participants? Are you excited, nervous, a bit of both? You can pop it in the chat. It's okay to feel all of that, because today you're starting as strangers. You haven't met yet, but who knows, you might end up landing on something that changes the world, because these are big problems. You're meant to feel comfortably uncomfortable. You're meant to feel stretched out of your comfort zone and to experience all of the things that you feel when you are trying to change something, but you will be supported. And to that end, I want to share with you now, this is a visual. I know it's little to read, but to give you this visual of, it's the participants in the middle and everyone around that will be supporting it. And I'm blown away by who we have helping and supporting. We have, as you can see, we have Michelle Kramer, Paula Morrison, and Jill Hannaford from GHD Future Communities, and you can see what a strong vision and strong mandate they have. We have challenge champions who you will meet in a minute in more detail, so I'll go into that in a little while. Each one of your teams will have a mentor, a dedicated mentor, and the caliber of these mentors and their experience will give you a lot of assistance and guidance and support for your team to help you navigate through the Smart Seeds program. And finally, the team from GHD Digital's D-Lab, we have Radhika Sharma, who will be your facilitator, facilitating and teaching you through the 7 learning labs. Kay Leung, extraordinaire, who needs no introduction because I'm sure you've all met Kay through the process of joining Smart Seeds. Kay is our program manager and makes this whole thing run. And she's supported by Laura Lang, who's also assisting with the coordination. And of course, myself as well. So this is the big group. It's everyone on this call and their networks. That's what you've got to draw on. I know you're probably all super excited and wanting to start to hear more about these challenges, and then of course, which challenge you've been assigned and which team you're in. So let's get on with that. The first challenge, I feel like I want to do a drum roll or something. The first challenge is around achieving sustainable place attraction. How might we create vital, active places and communities that encourages people of all different ages, cohorts, cultures, and purpose to visit, dwell, and linger? We are super fortunate to have Sarah Nielsen, the General Manager for Placemaking at Stockland, be the champion for this challenge, but unfortunately she can't be with us today. However, Sarah has prepared a video presentation, and while you're watching it, I'm really keen for everyone on the call to listen. And I also just want to quickly say, I appreciate that everyone is focusing on this launch and just being here with us to be part of this community and not multitasking. It's really grateful for that. So when you hear this video from Sarah, this presentation, think about if it sparks any ideas for you about who the team tasked with this challenge might want to speak to about this. So if you've got anyone in your networks or anyone that you've heard of that you think could be good, pop it in the chat in Zoom and we'll collate all of that for the team. Okay, here we go.
My name's Sarah Nielsen and we're here to talk about the creation of vital active places and the communities that encourage people of different ages, cohorts, culture and purpose to visit, dwell and linger. So the journey for great place creation really starts with thinking about how you feel when you're in somewhere awesome and what are the elements that are making it so different about this place that you're in. So some of my favourite examples are King's Cross in London or Box Park in Shoreditch, Bryant Park or the High Line of New York. All of these were solving something from a great vision through to execution, and the halo impact on these places has been exponential. So the process of understanding place and the needs, it needs a much deeper search to really understand the connection to the land and the history of the place, Understanding the problems and the suffering within the community is also really important to then also try and work out where the potential gaps are in the social infrastructure. We also need to learn to understand how the connection to nature and the broader biosphere and the impact on the more vulnerable parts of our ecosystem have been considered in the creation of place. For a place to be full of vitality and purpose, there needs to be a process of deliberate visioning, and then this connected understanding of how it's going to be anchored by a commercial sort of element. So in thinking about the creation of creating great, safe, appealing, desirable places that drive sustainable outcomes, it really involves a careful, deep exploration. And it's so important that, when we have the privilege to work on great assets, that we really do the work to understand the elements that will make up a great place. Really look forward to working with you on this project. Thanks a lot.
Oh, thank you, Steve. Steve's put in a comment that scientists and biology types to look at nature and flora and fauna side of this one too would be really interesting. So I hope that has prompted some ideas from some of you to think about. And like I said, really fortunate to have Sarah leading this challenge for us. Next up, making affordable housing accessible for future generations. And with this week's news of the rate rises, and I know that this is on front of mind for a lot of people in our communities, how might we consider, or reconsider, I should say, reconsider financial, urban planning or other mechanisms for future generations that increase accessibility to and provide that confidence in housing affordability, which is so fundamental. It's my great honour to introduce now Rebecca Pinkston, the CEO from Bridge Housing, to speak more about this challenge. Rebecca.
Thanks very much. Thank you for having me, everyone. I'm really excited that we have affordable housing on the agenda as one of our challenges, and it is promising to see that affordable housing is featuring heavily in the election campaign, and what we can do to actually make housing more affordable and livable for our community into the future. I might go on to the next slide. I'm not going to go through all the facts and figures because I know that our challenge group will be able to dig deep into this area. But one thing I just want to say is that we are in the middle of an affordable housing crisis in Australia. We have growing numbers of people on the social housing waiting list, 200,000 actually across Australia and 44,000 in New South Wales. And of those, the numbers who are critically in need of housing in New South Wales, that's about 8,000 people. They are waiting longer and longer for housing in our community. At the same time as this is happening, the proportion of social housing and affordable housing is actually dropping in the housing market, and it's down to 4.4% of all housing now. And what that is doing is having ramifications for our communities everywhere. We're seeing growing levels of homelessness, up 14% in just the last 4 years. Renting is on the rise and housing ownership rates are falling, particularly for young people. And at the same time as we're looking at definitions of affordable housing, housing stress, that is the people paying over 30% of their income, is increasing, with now about 50% of households facing housing stress if they're on some sort of a government benefit or on the minimum wage. We also have to look at the livability of our housing. Our communities are ageing. Is our housing stock actually there fit for purpose and enabling people to remain at home for as long as possible? And I will also pick up on the issue around construction costs. Recently, there's been studies by ACON of the cost of housing and delivery. Sydney and most of the Australian capital cities are coming up in the top 10 most unaffordable cities in the world. And a large component of that is the fact that our housing is very expensive to construct. So we need to be looking at different approaches. In terms of our solutions on the next slide, it's a complicated issue, and housing crosses over lots of policy areas. It crosses over our tax settings, it crosses over the planning system and how we're able to build houses more effectively, and it looks at design. But what I will say is that we need to be looking at new approaches, and in particular investment in our social and affordable housing at the lower end of the market. This would help stop the pressure of rental affordability for people on lower incomes and give them a safe and secure home. And at the same time, we do need to look at our tax settings, which are favouring people who already have a property to own more properties at the expense of people getting into the market to own their property or to have a secure rental property. So looking at the intersection between different policies, federal government, state government, local government, and how we can create effective partnerships between the community housing industry, between developers and government to actually deliver more housing will be an interesting challenge for our participants.
Thank you, Rebecca. Very timely, very compelling, but the opportunity there to really create a lasting impact on so many people in Australia. I'm really inspired by both of these challenges. I am also really just as interested if anyone on the launch call today has anything that they want to drop in as a comment or something else to consider. All of this is going to help the teams and also to show the teams and the participants just who else is interested in supporting them as they tackle something as big as this. For the next challenge, we're going to do something a little different. I'm going to share a video again. This time it's a little quick excerpt from a popular Australian TV show, one of my favorites, Utopia. Some of you might be chuckling already. I want to share this as a bit of a clue to what the next challenge will be, and I'm keen to see what you think it might be after seeing this clip.
This is a great project.
Yes.
Department's on board.
Check.
So what's standing in our way?
Currently, 12 houses.
And possibly part of a primary school.
Oh, my God.
It's okay. Kids love trains.
Not running through their classroom.
How big a problem is it?
Well, for a start, we haven't told the residents.
We haven't told Cabinet.
What?
Keep going.
Normally, with these things, there's a process of community consultation.
Let's get on with it then. Start consulting. Go out, listen to people's concerns, take them on board.
And then?
We can start building.
That's not how consultation works.
Yes, it is.
No, it's not how it's meant to work.
Well, if it ain't broke.
The key is to show people we're listening.
And would this show
let them know we want input, feedback.
Those are just words.
Good words.
Engagement.
There's another.
And will this consultation change our
It
plans?
will shape them, inform them. It's all part of having a mature debate.
If one side has no intention of conceding, then it's not a mature debate.
Yes, it is.
It isn't.
It is.
It isn't.
It is.
It isn't.
It
That
is.
is not a mature debate.
Yes, it is, and I just won. Now let's get moving.
Is that familiar to anybody? Well, I'm really curious. I'm sure you've already got a bit of an idea about what this might be about, but I'm very excited to introduce Sharon Sebastian and to bring back Leon Farwood for this one to explain a bit more about the challenge, please. Sharon and Leon, over to you.
Thank you, Emma. And thank you for allowing us time to show that video. And our challenge is how we ensure voices of individuals in a community are represented and heard in the creation of meaningful, inclusive, and safe public places, spaces, and communities. And I think from that video, you'd probably agree that the first step is to really understand who we will be engaging. Do we need to engage communities in remote regions, groups with a disability, culturally diverse backgrounds, youth? We've done quite a bit of youth engagement recently, or maybe even a group of seniors. So ultimately, knowing your audience and understanding what's important to them and why will really help drive that genuine engagement. And ultimately, that builds trust. Knowing what their key drivers are will really help formulate what that discussion will be, and understanding what negotiables and non-negotiables may be on a particular project. And without those discussions and having those conversations with community, all we're doing is really channeling our inner Kitty Flanagan and running through a bit of a checklist. And I'll pass over to Leon, who will add another layer in terms of Indigenous community engagement.
Yeah, thank you, Sharon. So I just want to concur with everything that was shared by Sharon. My role, obviously, as a senior Indigenous engagement consultant, my focus is all be very specific in relation to the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander community and the challenges that are there, you know, not only in relation to the complexities of communities generally, but especially when it comes back to communities and opportunities for consultation and what that means. And even when I did the acknowledgement at the outset, I made the point of saying that traditional custodians are connected to country. The fact and understanding that when you go into Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities, the complexities around traditional custodians, land councils and all those sorts of other competing stakeholders, who do you engage with? How should you be engaging? When should you be engaging? So those are the things that I look to help in relation to specifically focusing on the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander community. It's funny that snippet I can relate actually. The only bit that's missing if it was an Aboriginal community, get Leon, where's Leon? Call Leon, he's Aboriginal, he'll have the answers. So I've actually been in a situation like that. So I look forward to helping and helping, give advice around that in the challenge in relation to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander community.
Thank you, Leon and Sharon. And I was just reflecting on how valuable that offer of support for the teams will be as they do begin their insights and research. If anyone has anything to contribute, I sense that this is an issue that's familiar, but something that many on this call would be really passionate about and sometimes frustrated by, or sharing your frustrations. So I'm just as eager to see some fresh thinking on this and novel ideas. If you can't see that, Sharon and Leon, Crystal's just added, regarding voices of the communities, it is important to gather from a diverse group, but there are also those that do not want to speak up or don't have time or care to speak up. How do we engage with them? Their thoughts are just as important. So that's a really good insight. It's very hard to reach people that might not want to be reached or might not know that it's going on. Is there something more you want to add to that, Sharon and Leon?
Did you want me to kick off?
Yeah, you kick off, Sharon. Yep.
That's where, with stakeholder engagement and community engagement, taking a blanket approach will never achieve genuine community engagement, because have you truly understood the different stakeholders you have, and understanding who you're going to be speaking to, and knowing that, say, if you're in a particular region where certain community members might not be able to get to an info drop-in session that you've got at the local shopping centre or at the local council hall because they can't travel, identifying who those groups and individuals may be, and coming up with a little bit of a out-of-the-box thinking, bespoke approach to actually reach those individuals and or groups to get the information to them, as opposed to relying on them to come to you. So that's where your toolkit is your essentially add things to your engagement toolkit that are going to add value and help you reach those individuals.
Yep, absolutely. So I agree with everything Sharon said, and just to make the point, that's why you want to engage as early as possible to be able to see, to appreciate, those methods of, bespoke methods to engage, but then also finding out, potentially who doesn't want to engage, and allowing time for relationships to be built to enable that engagement and that bespoke approach to be implemented, to engage it that way. Because in the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander community, and it's probably the same across a lot of other communities, there's a lot of consultation fatigue. They're busy all the time giving advice or engaging in consulting. But then there's this, for example, they're exhausted because there's so many projects on at one time, but then also there's no closing the gap. There's no coming back and letting the community know what was, how that information was used. And a lot of people then disengage. So yeah, it takes time. That's why you want that early engagement as well.
So the team that will be tackling this challenge will be having some great guidance about engagement and what best practice looks like while they are trying to solve for better engagement, which I think will be really fascinating. So to our next challenge now. Oh, thank you, Annalise. There's just one more great suggestion there about tapping into existing networks, into communities, and definitely not assuming that you're the primary knowledge holder. Excellent. So there will be excellent support here. You can already sense that from who's on the call today. Now, personally, where I'm sitting right now is in a flood zone between the Ovens and King River in Wangaratta. And so this sort of, I live in a community to which this is really a pertinent issue. So I just wanted to say that I have a lot of lived experience about climate shocks, shall we say. How might we articulate the interdependencies between critical infrastructure systems so that communities can understand, anticipate, and then reduce the impact when the climate shock occurs? So this is about climate resilience for livability and population growth. And we have championing this today, Kate Patanyotu and Tina Morano. Kate is the technical director for GHD, and Tina is the business development strategy and communications leader at GHD. And they've prepared a couple of slides to go a bit deeper on this and explain what they mean. Over to you.
Thanks, Emma. Hi, everybody. Resilience has been extensively studied at many disciplines since the 1970s. And we know it's a major topic when you're discussing health of communities and, of course, climate change and the greater impacts that it can have over time. It's creating an urgency to act. And now communities are starting to voice their concerns more and more, and they're starting to ask, where do we start and how do we prioritise? 70% of cities globally are already dealing with climate change impacts. 55% of the world's population is urban. By 2050, that's going to increase to about 70%. The need to address and invest in creating resilient urban infrastructure is price tagged at over $4.5 trillion annually. 25% of this is focused on low carbon and creating resilient infrastructure. Recognising that critical infrastructure is connected and has interdependencies across systems, and a more holistic approach to understanding what good resilience, looks like is actually critical. Basically, failure is not an option. The shocks to critical infrastructure systems also impact financial, economic, environmental, and social systems. There's also a less tangible impact that are equally important, if not more important. For example, community trust, public health, and well-being. When we look at resilience, it's really important to acknowledge that communities are made up of various stakeholders, varying values, needs, and will be affected by these shocks differently. Leaders must ensure that all community members can thrive. If we just go on to the next slide, please. So for this challenge, you might consider a mid-sized municipality or local council and how a shock to one system can create a domino effect that disrupts daily life, possibly creating devastating long-term effects. As was mentioned earlier in today's session, there have been bushfires, there have been floods, there's COVID. So you could look at a single event or compound events. Take the Queensland storms, record-breaking rainfall, entire suburbs underwater, rivers swelling, overflowing water, power outages, schools and businesses closed, disruptions to people's daily lives, as well as human lives have been lost. While we can't take control of the climate events directly, community leaders can address climate change by taking action to prepare and mitigate, as well as respond and recover from climate disasters. These leaders still face numerous challenges and barriers, such as community-wide coordination, communication, lack of funding or access to funding, resource capacity to respond in a most effective way. It's not just looking at an individual event. You talk to groups like the World Bank, the UN, they're now starting to look at climate as disaster risk management. It's starting to be considered in a very different fashion. The challenge, and what we're challenging you to do, is to dig deeper. Think creatively, innovatively about how communities can better understand, articulate and quantify not only the individual events, but the interdependencies, and how we might be able to anticipate, prepare, and reduce the impacts of shocks to people, places and structures or assets. Thanks, Emma.
Thank you, Kate. And Tina, was there anything you wanted to add? Do we have
presenting today? Thanks.
Do we have any questions from anybody? Does anyone have a different perspective on this, perhaps? I've got a question, Kate, just on the emphasis of this is on how communities can work together to articulate and understand how it all fits together and what that impact would be so that they can mitigate it. So are you thinking that it's, without wanting to go straight to solution mode, is this a problem that's more about helping people to understand and to have the same view of what the bigger picture is or what that whole system looks like? Or is it about a more technical focus? What are your...
We're probably open. As you know, we do a lot of this work. So I guess having run some of the Smart Seeds programs before, and as you say, not wanting to get into solution mode, it could be about how do we bring communities along for the journey so that there's a greater understanding about not one-off events, and realistically the floods and the bushfires in the last couple of years are key examples, especially when you look at, let's say, Lismore and you think about a whole community that's been wiped out. Like, how do we build back better? So it could be around community interest and education and a solution around that, or it could be around a tool for collecting data and information and looking at technological solutions. We don't want to narrow it down. So happy to be involved in any of the discussions, and obviously it's a massive issue. So yeah, wouldn't want the team to get sort of stuck in the detail and the weeds, but I actually think keeping it a little bit open at the moment to see where the team's thinking goes and where some of the tools of the Smart Seeds program and ideation can kind of lead them. I'd be happy to keep it a little bit open-ended.
Excellent, thank you. And you know, I'm already seeing, I remember Rebecca talking about the affordability or the cost of construction after and you're talking about how do you rebuild a city after that's been wiped out, and you were talking about that community approach and how do you bring a community along. So that we're already seeing threads sort of interwoven between some of these challenges too. That's really interesting. And I know that this also leads to Steve Lennon's challenge that he'll present in a minute, which we can go to this now, Steve, because we're talking about disasters and how communities respond. This is about talking about post-pandemic opportunities and learnings.
Thanks, Emma. And I hope the background noise here at the Hospital Cafe isn't too bad for you all. I just got back from LA this morning, and so I apologize if I'm not in my elegant finest dress either. So I'm Steve Lennon. I lead our digital business here in Australia, and I've been lucky enough to be working in and around the built environment and our cities and communities for a long time now, with people like Arup and now GHD, and also some of the largest IT systems integration firms, where we've looked at how technology can support making cities work for people, kind of rather than the other way around. So the pandemic has been a real, like a massive disruption of life on Earth, and it's been both a blessing and a curse. We have now, as Kate mentioned, an opportunity to build back better, as Mr. Biden likes to talk about. But let's just think for a moment about what the pandemic has done, because it's probably had a much bigger impact on us than we'd like to admit for the moment, or that we might not truly reflect upon until we're a little further down the track here. We've got COVID kids who've been around for 2 years who may never have met other children in their lives. COVID teens whose last critical years of education were badly interrupted, and which has pushed them online and reinforced those preferences for using social media and so on that may or may not be good for the rest of their lives. COVID colleagues, I know you and I, Emma, have many of them who we've never met in real life in person just yet, that we hope to soon. Many COVID escapees, hundreds of thousands of people who moved out of big cities and down towards you, Emma, in Wangaratta, or me in Mittagong. And that's changed the nature of what our cities and regions look like. And literally millions of COVID impacted people who've had long COVID, who've lost loved ones and been unable to attend funerals, who've lost their jobs and businesses in hospitality, retail and elsewhere. And we won't see the full impacts of those changes for some time yet. And while the COVID-19 pandemic has had that enormous impact, we'll see the combination of climate change, changes in technology. We've got a war in Russia. We've got this volatile, uncertain, complex and ambiguous environment that's going to persist for decades to come. And Ray Kurzweil at Google reminds us that in this century, we're likely to see 20,000 years worth of progress and change, not just 100 years, compared to what we've had in the last century. So we now have an opportunity to leverage the positive learnings we've had from the pandemic and celebrate that sense of local, using technology in a constructive way, alternate ways of working, learning and playing that we've discovered to create the more diverse, thriving and sustainable communities we'd all like to be part of. So some of the things we're going to explore is how we can use infrastructure and communities that can be more change able rather than set in stone. How we can leverage technology intelligently, but avoid its darker downsides. How we can capture the spirit of innovation we saw, and there's so many stories we can catalogue of wineries moving to hand sanitizers, the company Stage Kings moving from making stage sets to ISO furniture, and lots of others, and how we can continue to leverage the generosity of spirit we witnessed as people supported each other through the pandemic and the darkest days of lockdown. And one of the highlights, I thought, I'm not sure if you were part of this activity, Emma, but bin night dancing, where people dress up in fancy costume and run down their footpath with their wheelie bin just to kind of have some human interaction with others. So there's lots we've got to work with if once we sort of get over the COVID impacts we've seen, and I'm excited to explore this challenge with the team.
Thank you very much, Steve. It's an inspiring challenge. We often think of challenges as being negative, but hearing that makes me just reinforces that all of these challenges are actually tremendous opportunities to make real impact. And I just want to reinforce that. I can imagine being an emerging leader, looking at the enormity of these, thinking, wow, this is a big thing to get to tackle. But remember, you have a lot of support. There have been a few thousand before you, and who knows, you really might land on something that could change the world. There's not an expectation that you have to, but you might. And to that end, I would like to now share the challenge team, announce the teams. If I had a drum, I would do the big drum roll, but I don't. So I'm just going to share a slide that has all of you all at once. Ta-da! So this is what you're in for, everybody. Starting with achieving sustainable place attraction. Ali Morgan, Alex Frost, Ben Johnston, Jack Holmes and Jessica Carson. You have an excellent mentor in Melissa Ross, and you have Sarah Nielsen also from Stockland guiding you. So we can't wait to see what you do with this challenge, and equally so for making affordable housing accessible for future generations. Catherine Liao Curtin, Hayley Micah, Stephen Collins, Effie Warren and Hayden Franklin. This one's yours for the next 12 weeks with Annalise Rees as your mentor from GHD and Rebecca Pinkston from Bridge Housing. So that's your dream team right there, Rebecca. I know you'll be meeting them soon. Sharon and Leon, with the voices of community and the utopia lived experiences we sometimes have, you'll have Purnima Kare, Amanda Kerslake, Jack DeLister, Jacob Pickles, and Crystal Tang, who I know, Crystal, you made a comment about this as well. So I'm hoping you're happy to be in this challenge. And then moving to climate resilience for population growth and livability. Congratulations, I think, for Genevieve Giddens, Caitlin Neal, Christopher Yip, Caitlin Withers, and Haneen Hajamad. This is a big one. And your mentor is Kate Hannaford, who's here from JHG. And of course, you have Tina Morano and Kate Panayotu as well to champion this for you. And finally, Steve, the team tasked with post-pandemic communities and learning from what all the things that we learned that you mentioned. Zoran Hladen, Muhadissa Hedari, Sally McLennan, Vinnie Tandil, and Isaac McCormick. This is your challenge for the next 12 weeks. I hope you're excited. I am. I really am. I think that these are incredible challenges that the leaders from these organisations have spent a lot of time considering and crafting. We have a very strong future communities vision in GHD that we are all watching with interest and wanting to support with interest. For all of you on the call, you need to save this date. I'm going to leave this up for a minute. There's a showcase event will be on July 21st. So we'll be sending out placeholders for that. That's where you get to see these 26 strangers are now about to meet each other. They've got their challenge. And in 12 weeks' time, can you imagine all of that work they're going to do and where they're going to get to? This showcase is not to be missed. It's going to be so exciting. It's just incredible. They're starting from just today, not knowing each other, just giving this challenge, and now they're on their way. So it will be super exciting. Michelle, I want to thank everyone for coming, and I'm really keen to hear your thoughts from what you've heard as we close this and move on to Lab 1.
Thanks, Emma. Look, I just want to say a huge thank you to everybody for participating in this amazing exercise. I was sharing with, and I've shared a little piece in the comments there as well, that I recently drove through the Lismore area, and the white garden furniture from the 80s, I think it was probably Siebel, that was stuck up in the 5 meters up in the air in the trees, and it'll probably be there till the next flood comes through, really brought that particular challenge home for me. And it's those lived experiences that we're all having at the moment that really is what brings the gravitas to these challenges that what we're taking on. So many layers of thanks. The first thank you I'm going to say is to the participating organisations and for the people that are joining us from there, but they're not just participants, which I think is fantastic. We've actually got these participating organisations are helping us out as mentors and also as challenge champions, as you will have seen through that presentation. So delighted to have these organisations on board in all those different roles. I'm particularly grateful to the challenge champions who presented today, who are dealing with international travel, digital issues, personal crises, and all sorts of other things that meant that they demonstrated agility and flexibility and robustness, and were still able to present the challenges. And I think that puts us all in a good place for the next 12 weeks, where lots of challenges will come our way. We've even got people out on COVID just to really bring the COVID pandemic home. And I wish you as teams all the very best of luck. I know the challenges seem big, as Emma said, but I think with your fresh thinking and lived experience, we're in really good hands. And I look forward to seeing what you all deliver on the 21st of July. So let's bring it on. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Michelle. And I just echo Michelle's big thanks to everybody for being here with us today and being fully present. So mentors and participants, and of course facilitators. We're going to take a quick 10-minute break, and then we're going to kick off with Lab 1. So for everybody else, you're now free to go, and then we'll see you back for the showcase on July 21. Thank you very much again. Mentors, participants, stretch, get a refreshment, get ready, because you're now about to start Smart Seeds and you're about to get started, and we can't wait. So thank you all, everybody, again.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Emma.
See you.
Michelle.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.